record on this computer.
Okay, Neil had a question. Go ahead, Neil.
Yeah, before we get started, I didn't, he's over there. I didn't get any notification through Meetup. Would we normally expect to get that?
My understanding is that, yes, we asked people to sign up on Meetup, and yes, and I told people to be sure to sign up by Tuesday night. Then yesterday I sent an email out from Meetup.
Yeah, I got your email, but I'm signed up with Meetup. But do you mean you had to sign up specifically for this Zoom?
Yes, there was an invitation that came out of Meetup, and it just allowed you to accept that invitation.
Yeah, but you've got to know about it in advance then.
Well, club is still working on how we communicate with people. But yes, we try to send those notifications out on Meetup, and unfortunately, if you're not on Meetup, it's hard. That's why last night, Neil, I think you were one of them. I
got the email, and that worked.
I sent a giant email out, but it wasn't everybody because I didn't have everybody's email. So
okay, but Alan,
that's the way it is.
That works. But Meetup, if you don't regularly go to Meetup, if you can't distribute an email through Meetup, then nobody knows, or I didn't. And I am on Meetup, but I don't go there much.
Neil, you have to be signed up at Meetup to receive notifications.
I think he is, but he has to sign up, I think, for that particular event.
Okay.
Yes.
And the other problem is if you just sign up for notifications, you're going to get like 6 a day about meetups in your area, potential groups you might like. I mean,
so Dan, you can't narrow that down to just
that part. I don't know. All I know is I had to shut mine off because
I don't get a lot of notices, but I think if you're signed up as part of the club on our Meetup site, then you should get these messages. That's my understanding, but I'm not a Meetup guru.
Alan, I am, and I didn't.
Okay, I don't know what to tell you, Neil, except you did find out, fortunately, because I sent out a giant.
Thank you very much for the email.
I did not get everybody, and it's
a work in progress.
At the board, we keep talking.
Yeah, we'll have to work on that some more. Thank you for bringing it up.
The emails work, and they work good.
Alan?
Yes.
Alan, I never go to Meetup. I just click on the link you send me through your email, and I go right into Zoom because I'm on many other Zoom meetings during the week.
Well, listen, let's not get bogged down on this, Ruth, but the issue is that the way we're supposed to be communicating these events and scheduling them is through Meetup, and there's an issue there, but we'll try to work through that.
Okay,
right.
We'll have to work on that to make it better so everyone can know about it.
Okay. Well, listen, just a few thanks here. So Linda, thanks. Linda's the one that really helped set up this meeting. And fortunately, here we have she's got a premium subscription, so we can go over the usual 40-minute limit. And she's really been helpful to teach us how to Zoom and work through with us on that. So thank you, Linda.
No picture.
I'll introduce Dan in just a moment, but Dan is up there, the surfer-looking dude, and I'll be introducing him in just a minute. But he's got a really great program scheduled here. And I had a note here that the board's trying to, I'll not go through this because the discussion was just how we're trying to communicate with people. But keep your eye on Meetup. If you go in and sign up as a member on the Meetup site for Aqua Tutus, you'll get these messages. And that's just the best way to do it. For example, I know Oliver sent out a note yesterday.
Alan, I've done that and I didn't get any messages, so it's not working.
I heard you, Neil, so let's put it to bed now.
Yeah, please.
Okay, so just a few points here. Dan would like to take questions during his talk. So again, if you have a question, I'm going to mute you in just a minute. And if you have any questions during his talk, just use the little raise your hand icon that should be on the participants panel on the side. And then Linda and I will try to see them, and as Linda said, she'll let you in. Also, at the end of Dan's program, we're going to have a general Q&A there, so you can certainly ask your questions then. And then the plan is at the very end of the program, when Jono did this with Brandy Mueller, we just kind of opened it up like we are now, just everybody talking. So we'll see if we'd like to do that. And then finally, I'm recording the program. So if you're a little bit shy, turn off your video or something, I guess. But anyway, we're recording it, and we'll see if we can get it posted a little bit later on. So I'm going to go ahead and mute everybody and see if I can mute everybody except, yes, except for Linda. So Linda, I can unmute you. Can
I unmuted myself. I'm good.
Okay, and Dan, I unmuted you, so. Or I don't see that. You might want to unmute yourself, Dan.
No, he's unmuted. He's good.
Is he? Oh, he is now. Okay, good. Okay, well, our speaker tonight is Dan Schwartz. Over there for me. He's been a part of our dive club for the past couple of years. He's an excellent photographer. I kind of realized that during the speaker's night. But he does both topside and underwater. And if any of you have not done so, you should go to his Instagram account. Just get an Instagram account and go to his account. It's called Aqua Tutus Photos, 3 words. And he's got some really impressive photographs. So do that. Dan has been diving since the 90s, and he's been doing underwater photography almost from the beginning. He started with a Nike 5, and he now uses a mirrorless Olympus OEM system, a house system. Dan has been able to dive and photograph around the world in the Caribbean, the South Pacific, and Indonesia. But he loves diving and photographing California waters, and he dives both with our club and with the Barbary Coast Divers. So I think he's going to talk about that out of.
Yeah, there's no time for that. I bagged it.
Besides underwater photography, Dan became involved in several marine environmental organizations, working as a volunteer at the Marine Mammal Center since 2002, and with Reef Check as a citizen scientist since 2007, and he volunteers for all of those. He has become interested in photojournalism, published in the Air Fiji In-Flight magazine, and has produced a couple podcasts so far for Reef Check. Within the Apple podcast programs, you can look for Coastal Horizons, and he's got 2 podcasts there. One deals with how Reef Check began, talking to the founders, called Origins, Global Fins in the Water. And the other podcast that's interesting is about the deployment of underwater temperature sensors that Reef Check has been hauling along the California coast. They call them hobos, temperature monitoring sensors. So in spite of all this going on, I'm amazed Dan still has a day job. He lives in Berkeley, and he owns his own company in electrical and security systems. So we're really lucky to have Dan in the club, and that he's agreed to present to us tonight. So Dan, if you're ready, I'll hand this over to you.
Okay. All right. Thanks a lot, Alan. And thanks everybody for showing up. And then Doreen's here. She's my Thursday night cruise supervisor. So welcome, Doreen. So anyway, I don't have to preach to the choir that the oceans are really wonderful and mysterious place. And when you start doing macro, what you're basically doing is taking a magnifying glass, and you're seeing things that you really often can't see with the naked eye just because they're too small or some things are camouflaged. And so that's what I was going to present today, is just what's happening mostly off of Monterey. When I was going through my photos, there was maybe 1 or 2 things that were happening down from the Channel Islands, but I actually had enough to do what I wanted to do with just right here in our backyard. And I want to start, everybody asked me like, okay, what is the underwater housing? What does all this mean? So basically, this is an underwater housing. You just put a regular camera inside, and then these strobes actually light up and give the artificial light to whatever it is that you're going for. And then this is what's known as a wet macro lens. So basically this can screw on in the water, and I can pop this off and do macro, or I can take it off and photograph something probably the size of a harbor seal or something. So it gives me a lot of adaptivity of when I want to go in, because sometimes, you know, you have a macro lens on and you see something really big and it's SOL. So I play around with those two. So now I'm going to screen share and share. If I can hit the button right. Okay. I'm going to go back a few and screen sharing. Okay. So this is an up close of an abalone. Let's say it's a pink ab. One of the biggest things that you want in underwater photography is to get the eyes in focus. And the other thing is to get down to eye level. I know as divers, usually we're up above the subject, but really when I photograph, to make a more engaging photograph, you really need to be down eye level. So generally, I'm like almost laying on the ocean floor. I maybe got one fin knocking around. And so this is a rock scallop. And again, I love seeing like their little eyes, you know, little things that normally just wouldn't see looking at the larger version of that one. This is a kelp crab that I had lit, and sometimes I also have a 60mm lens, so I can actually go even smaller than what my regular lens can do with that thing. At one point, I actually can look at, when I look at Lightroom, I can actually see what lens I had on, what settings I had on, and I can play for my next dive of how I want to do things. I can watch hermit crabs all day. They just crack me up. Their eyes are just so expressive. Some of the things they put on their back. This is in the sand off of the breakwater that I had taken many moons ago, but it's still one of my favorite photos just because of the expression. And it looks like he's got a whole city on his back or her back or something. When they just pick a shell, it looks, I don't know, beach blanket Babylon or something. I'm expecting San Francisco to be belted out. So now, instead of just showing animals, I want to explain some of like what goes through my head when I'm actually looking at marine life to photograph. So this is a hermescenda. This one goes way back. This is like almost 2003, one of the first digital photos I had taken. Now the hermescendas are translucent, and they're really beautiful. They're probably one of the most photographed macro critters out there off of Cannery Row. And what I was noticing is that when it's off of the sand, yeah, it highlights, but when I have the bladder kelp and the dark olive of the bladder kelp, it really highlights the translucent blues a lot more. And that was really started having me pay attention to not just the animal, but what's in the background. And here we've got, I would say maybe it's an urchin, but those things are kind of off. They don't really look like their spines, but contrasting colors of having purple against an orange makes the cup coral stand out a lot more. And a lot of these is going to be my own interpretation, so your mileage may vary.
So Dan, where was that taken at?
You got me. I would have to actually go and on another thing I actually have, it's basically, most of these are Carmel Bay and Monterey Bay.
Okay.
So whether it's off of the aquarium, whether it's off the Maccabee Beach, that I don't know. I would actually have to go into, I'd have to delve a little bit deeper and actually pull up where the slides were from, because I just have dates and I would have to go back to the dates into the folder and see that. The cup corals are all over the place. So these are really, I don't want to say they're a dime a dozen, but they're everywhere. So at some point it begins like, okay, I've got, say, 100 of them. How do I take these in a different way, in a different angle to make it interesting? And that becomes the game within the game. So we have acorn barnacle, and then we got the Coriolanactus in the background. That's not just highlighted, but it's also almost a different texture. So we've got straight lines kind of here, and then the texture there, and then the bright highlights of the orange makes the acorn barnacle stand out. And we can talk, we're going to get into behaviors, but that will be in a little bit. But that's what I was going through in mind. So I'll be like, when I see something, I'll start moving up and down and sideways and see if I can't line it up with something more interesting. And sometimes foreground. This is another one that I took way back when in 2003. So this is, I guess, probably the Metridium pipe. It looks like it's a pipe that it's sitting on. So it's one of those things. But it matches the painted greenling, and it's not too busy. So that's essential subject. Sometimes you don't want essential subject, but for the most part, you do want to have some kind of essential subject, or it becomes in our jargon a salad, where you get a bunch of cool things, but what does it mean? Where's it going with it? And a lot of times you can just have things black. So there's a lot of photographers that are doing macro using something called a snoot. And a snoot is literally just like a black tube that has a light in it, and it makes everything else around it pitch black and makes the subject stand out a lot more. And just looking at the thing. So this is a yellow edge candela, and it's probably off the breaker the inner reef. So we have the Spanish shaw. The Spanish shaw, I took this one with a black background, and then I basically overblew it. So basically with the strobe, I had the setting on too high and just made everything too bright, but I actually kind of like it. And it just gives a different feeling to same subject, but it's got a completely different feeling to it. And I just have fun with that. And like, okay, what can I say with this? The other thing is perspective. So you have the coon shrimp, and I can just take the coon shrimp, but how big is it? And it's kind of like one of the hardest things that I have doing is taking redwoods, because they're so big and you can't really tell unless you put something in front of it. You put a human in front of it and you go, oh, that's a really big tree. The same things with this thing. Sometimes I'll look to try to get something that'll show perspective of size, just how small it is, just how big it is, or just something that I think is kind of funny. So you got the sharp-nosed crab, kind of being a bestie with the coon shrimp. And yeah, just cracked me up. Let me get into behaviors. So behaviors is I look for the animal to do some kind of movement. So in still photography, what you want to do is have the height of the behavior. So whatever it's doing or thinking about doing, you want to catch it at the apex. If you're doing video, you'll be doing beginning and then the middle and then some kind of an exit, some kind of an ending for it. Here it's kind of like listening to radio theater where you see something, but now you're going to have to put your brain into where's it going? Where did it just come from? Where's is it going to move up or down? Is it going to start eating something? And so we got that one going. Then we have the horned aeolid. Same thing, a lot of movement. That the twisting of the body, it's going someplace. It's probably going to get something to eat, probably some of the bryozoans. And I just like it because, yeah, it shows behavior. Fishes can show behavior simply by their mouths open. Free swimming, it's tough to do with macro, but for here, yeah, just with the bay goby, just simply with its mouth open, conveys a behavior, some kind of an action, even it's just sitting there blowing bubbles. This Hermescinda was crawling on, I think it would be probably a sea pen. And again, we've got the curved body that shows that it's crawling. It's kind of framed it where it shows some kind of movement. There's some water movement. The serrata is going all over the place.
Now, everybody, if you have some questions, don't feel shy about asking, because he wants us to be interactive.
Yeah, I was actually thinking it was going to take longer for each slide. We're going to be load this thing in 10 minutes. Usually when they do it at the dive club, everybody's raising their hands and asking all sorts of questions. I just put together about 30 slides. So next, hey, Jane.
Okay, we got a question. Jane, I'm going to unmute you.
Oh, I was just going to comment. I really love the motion of the serrata on this. It's very nice, and it's contrasty to the sea pen that's down below, but the serrata motion is beautiful, and it's head on. So that's all.
Yeah. It also makes very difficult for macro when you do have surge moving yourself back and forth, and it can be really tricky to try to nail it. And also, yeah, if this, I would have to wait for the serrata to go back there, because it's literally going to be going back and forth, and it becomes wait for it, and then boom, yeah, you hit the photo and hope it comes out.
And Gail has a question. Let me unmute her. Gail, you have to unmute yourself, looks like.
Dan, what editing software do you use?
So right now I'm playing with Lightroom. I've got an old version of 4. I literally just downloaded the subscription Lightroom, and it really didn't do anything new that I couldn't get out of 4, but charge me.
What would you recommend for a beginner for editing?
I just actually tried Luminar, and it's not too bad either. A lot of what I do, I don't want to recreate the wheel, so I'm old school. Once upon a time, there was this stuff called film that used to go in a camera, and you used to get 24 photos or 36 photos. And this thing called film can either go on a piece of paper called a photo, or it can go on a slide. And so when I did dive clubs, we would do the slides and blow these things up, 6 feet by 4 feet on those screens, and the color saturation, the crispness, a lot of it, I don't think digital can really hit that, because you're playing with the color card in the camera, you're playing the graphics card on your computer. Your computer calibration is going to be very different than mine. So all I'm really trying to do is just do what I call global settings to just try to get it to look like the old days of the slides. Luminar 4 does a lot of what Lightroom does, and it's just a lot of sliders. You just slide the thing back and forth, but it's also just understanding what those sliders do. Photoshop's fun, but I think if you're a beginner, there's a lot of tools there that just going to throw you off, because mostly you want to do global settings. So one of the first things I want to do is we have the green ocean here, so I want to take off the green cast and let some of the other colors come in. So in Lightroom, I'll take out the aquamarine, literally just desaturate. It's like literally a slider that you just slide and desaturate it. If I go into Photoshop, I'll go into settings and just take out some of the cayenne. And then, yeah, just I'm shooting a thing called RAW. So RAW is a file where everything that the camera shot is on there. When you do a JPEG, what it ends up doing is it just says, well, this color is close enough to this, so I'm just going to put these kind of colors together. And eventually you lose about 80% of the actual information from the actual photo. Now, officially, it's not a bad thing, because by now the cameras kind of know what they're doing, but sometimes I want to override those settings, and I can't, simply because I don't have all the information. I go from literally a 15 meg file to a 3, and I can't play with it. So once I shoot RAW, it kind of looks really gray and almost dingy until I start hitting some of the settings, and then it's like, whoa, everything starts opening up the way I had seen it. Remember, I'm also playing with artificial light. I'm really blasting this with a strobe that you're not going to get from a flashlight, unless you got a really heavy duty cave diving flashlight. Then you'll see this stuff light up. Because a lot of people go, oh, I didn't see that. I'm like, yeah, well, I've got a strobe, and you hit these things, and then you get to the whole question of, well, if you can't see the colors, why are they even existing? So somehow these animals can see these photos.
I have a strobe from Backscatter, a proprietary one of theirs, and then I also have a solar light.
Okay.
So I think I'm set up, but I just haven't found a software yet that I like to edit the photos.
What have you tried?
I had Picasso before.
Okay.
I mean, that was so minor. And then I looked at Lightroom, but it's a little above my skill level. So I'm just looking for something simple.
So something that Larry, I picked up from Larry, is Cyberlink does a pretty good job of almost as powerful as Adobe and a lot cheaper, and you can still get it. They do a subscription service, but you can still buy the individual things.
And what was the name of that, Neil?
Cyberlink.
Cyberlink. Thank you.
Yeah, I've got them for video that I play around with. I've got Luminar 4 that pretty much has the same thing. It almost seems like Adobe really hasn't progressed that much more. It seems like the competition caught up. And even when I'm trying this, you know, because I've got the Lightroom, I think it's like from 2013, and there's really not any more bells and whistles in this new subscription package. I literally just got it yesterday and the day before, and just playing around with it. I'm like, I really can't see a subscription for it because it's doing the same thing that I bought, you know, 7 years ago.
But Dan,
It looks
isn't
like
that-
Arnie's got a question here.
I'll check out those two. Thank you.
Yeah, I wanted to say about the Cyberlink.
Uh-oh.
And Cyberlink has both video and photo, and it is quite robust for about 95% of the amateur photographers. When you want to get into publishing, you definitely have to go to Lightroom and programs like that. But I highly
Thanks, Larry.
recommend the Cyberlink.
Hey, Arnie, I think did you have a question?
Actually, I've got a comment to give to Gail, who asked what
Okay.
program she should use. I started using Lightroom about a year ago, and I'm quite impressed with it, Dan. I find that I get upgrades from them about once every other month that have tweaked the capabilities. But there are two Lightrooms. There's Lightroom, which goes to the cloud. I don't advise using that. And then there's Lightroom Classic, which is a different beast. That's the only one I would suggest you consider. Runs you about $100 a year subscription. I do echo what Dan said. Shoot in RAW if you can. And hi, Larry.
Thank you, Arnie.
Hi, Arnie.
Okay, we're going to take one more question on this slide, and we'll have to move on. Jane had her hand up for a while. Go ahead, Jane.
Lightroom since they came out with it. And I have several versions in boxes if anybody wants them, but I started subscription about 2 years ago. And Erin Quigley, I don't know, maybe I should have posted something. She's since during the pandemic, she's been teaching Lightroom skills from the very beginning on webinars.
Oh, good. Erin Quigley.
Like teaching. And Erin Quigley is kind of the guru of Lightroom. She does seminars at the shootouts in Monterey, but she also is always on the shootouts that Backscatter has every year in Bonaire or Little Cayman or someplace. And she's really great. She's a great instructor. So she decided to do this, and she and Joel and Jen Penner produced this thing. So if you go ask Erin on her website, if you're interested in her live events, she's usually doing one on Mondays, and then she'll do a critique or something on Wednesday. She was doing them 3 days a week for a while. And then they recorded the sessions with chapters, and you can go to see what's on there that you could purchase for $20 each. So if you wanted just to start with Lightroom, you could buy those and watch them, and then and and she's really great.
Terrific.
Okay.
Thank you, everyone. This is all very
Shop
helpful.
as well. Yeah, she's been doing Photoshop as well, because there's a lot of people, I mean, people from all over the world are plugging into these things. They get up at 3 in the morning and stuff because they know about her. And so, yeah, it's Go Ask Erin, E-R-I-N. And I mean, I highly recommend it. I mean, she's great, and she'll, you know, and she'll answer questions. She also has a boot camp Facebook page if you've been to any of her sit-in sessions. So I think there's a lot, actually, I think there's been a lot of updates in Lightroom, and if you can kind of go as far as you want with it, you know, I mean, you can just do the real basic stuff, but like one of the images I was looking at before, if it's blown, if the, you know, if the highlights are a little blown out too much, you can go in and kind of mask out and level it out to what the colors really are, because the whole thing about editing an old film shooter myself. I love film and I hate the computer to use it, but when you shoot a digital file, it's just, yeah, it's kind of like Dan was saying, it's kind of gray and sometimes not that interesting because it hasn't been developed. So when you took your film in to get it developed, you kind of choose ahead of time. If you wanted Ektachrome, it was going to be kind of blue. We'd have Provia, we have Velvia for skin tones and stuff. And so when you go into Lightroom to develop, you're basically, that's what you're doing with your image and trying to bring out the most, you know, what you really saw. If the lights, if the colors are kind of gray, and it's, yeah, I mean, it's, I recommend it. Hope I didn't talk.
Thanks. Thank you, Jay.
That's fine. I want to cut it off. I didn't want this to turn into a Photoshop Lightroom session.
Yeah. Thanks, Jane. Okay.
But thank you. All right. So then the other thing with lighting is because I can move my strobes around, I'll take it from different angles to try to make it look interesting. So this is a cabezon that was sitting in North Monastery and felt that it was completely camouflaged. Nobody could see it. And I was able to get right up into its grill. And so basically I had my two strobes. The first one I've got basically full blast, and then the other one about 25 to 30%. So there's really not much in the way of angles. I came up from a little bit of the top. So there's no shadows here where the Siri is. And then I took the strobes and I went underneath it. And I got kind of like a Halloween effect. It's like putting a flashlight underneath your face. So I'll play around with just moving the strobes around from top to side to underneath to just try to create some kind of different mood of something that, you know, I don't know how many cabezon photos I have, but it's got to be a way to make it more interesting. And especially if it's going to be gracious enough to sit there, because a lot of them, they see you coming and they get out of there. And some, you know, other times when you have a willing participant to be the model, it's kind of fun to just play around and see what you can get away with.
Any questions?
Cool. Let's see what. And this is, again, I'm playing with lighting. I'm using one strobe now. So I'm basically lighting up the left-hand side, and which leaves the back side here dark, which now brings your face more into there, and then you start seeing that it's actually eating. So we're actually playing around with using light to focus your eye on the main part of it, which is it's eating. It's got the behavior going, and it lights everything up. You know, not too many shadows except where I want them to make the clown nudibranch stand out. So we talked about looking at things at eye level. This would be a coralline sculpin. So they're about maybe 3 inches long, and getting right down to eye level makes an engaging photo. But if you have the opportunity to go underneath and it becomes an entirely different mood of what the species is. So shooting things from above down looks wonky, but from down up, you can get some pretty cool photos because, you know, you're kind of putting it on a pedestal, and it's just a fun angle to play around with. A lot of times you're on the sea floor, you really can't go any further down unless you're going to dig a hole. But if it's up on a wall or something, and I have the opportunity to move around with it, and it's going to sit there, you know, a lot of times they're just gone after the first photo. It's like, sure.
Got a question. How did you get the dark background on it? Is it because the background is quite a ways away, or was it?
Yeah, it's farther enough away, and it's kind of where I had the way my strobe was set. It looks like I'm doing a side light, so I know it's coming at its face, but I'm actually moving it around to my side. So instead of being, say, up or even back where I am going to light that, I'm kind of already on the other side of that, because we can kind of see some shadows here, versus if I was shooting, say, straight ahead, I wouldn't see these shadows back here. I would see
Okay,
this.
we have a question from Neil. Go ahead, Neil.
Okay.
Dan, a technique I've had to use sometimes for things like crabs back in holes or eels is actually to hover over the subject and turn my camera where you can shoot it kind of upside down, but it's a way of getting the camera below the subject without having to dig that hole in the ocean bed so that you can lay underneath it.
Yeah, but I think if the species is already at ground level, yeah, I'm sorry, you can't shoot up anymore. You're I mean, you can turn the camera upside down. You just have an upside down photo.
But I'm saying the best you can do is lay the camera right on the sand.
Yeah, but now you're going to be at eye level. That's what I'm getting at. I mean,
well,
it might go a little bit up. But
that's
yeah.
as good as you can do.
Oh, exactly. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. You got to. It's what they're giving you to work with. So I don't move species around. I don't try to set up any kind of shots. It's you'll just really develop a power of observation of what is already out there. And
right. Now, what I was getting at, though, and I don't know if you ever do this, is that in order to get yourself, if you're trying to view through the camera or whatever and get it down, right down to the sand, your instinct would be to kind of lay right down on, and even then you can't really get it low enough. But by holding it underneath you and facing.
Oh yeah, no, I do that all the time. I mean, that's why you have like the tilt screens on the regular camera. Yeah, right. I mean, but at some point you have to at least see with the LCD viewer what you're photographing. You can't just shoot blindly. So at some point you can't do the tilt screen on the housings, at least not the ones that I've seen. But yeah, I do that all the time. But at some point, you've got to at least be able to see some way that in the LCD that you've got the thing framed. But yeah, it's a good point. Yeah, I mean, I'm not always going to keep it right up to my face. I've got this actually on a lanyard just for that. So now I do have mobility. This is always attached to my BC, but this, because it's on a lanyard, now gives me the opportunity to move it around all sorts of ways. Because yeah, if it was just right up to my face, no, that's not going to work at all. So now we're going to get into what I call autumn leaves. So autumn leaves is where there isn't any kind of a main subject. I'm just trying to get some kind of pattern. So when I call it autumn leaves, it's from New England. When you've got all these maple leaves scattered on the ground in the fall, and you see these really brilliant reds and oranges and yellows and just the serrated shape of the leaves. But it's just basically looking at the pattern that makes it really cool. So this would be the Metridium. I wasn't sure who was going to be on here if they knew exactly if I say Metridium, what's it mean? And then here it is blown up. And what I also like to do if something's translucent is take the strobe off the arm and highlight it from the back. So from here, because I've got this thing more translucent, so I've taken the strobe off and I'm holding it in my hand on the arm. And I'll do this for Gorgonians. I'll do this for, the Metridiums. I'll do it for wildflowers if I'm playing around with that. But it's just, and jellyfish are a fun way to do that, to backlight them. Other times you can get your dive buddy who's got a really strong dive light to highlight these things as well. But
And that doesn't really look backlit. Is it backlit? You had the strobe behind the Metridium?
Yeah, a little bit behind and below. So here you can see how much brighter it is versus up here.
Mm-hmm.
So it's more kind of, I'll say side lit, but it's a little bit from the back because I'm not getting any kind of shadows back here. If I just did it pure side lit, I would get some kind of much more definition here, and I'm not. I mean, I don't remember, but usually, historically, if I'm playing around, because I have so many Metridium photos, and now it becomes like, okay, how do I take them differently this time? Because I still enjoy going out to the fields, and you never know what you're going to find there. Then we have things like the tube anemones that you get over at the break. And then I'll just play around with just getting right up in its grill. I don't know what that is. Well, okay. I have no idea what that is. And then we're getting
You could
into...
use your annotation pen and then could have left the mark.
I don't think I have an annotation pen.
Yeah, but you do in Zoom.
Oh, okay. How do I get rid of it? Because I didn't realize I had an annotation pen. All right. Do you know how to get rid of it?
I would suggest stop sharing and then come back in. You can probably clear it.
Okay. There's the annotate pen. See if I can erase it.
There you go.
All right.
That works too.
Clear and bye-bye. Okay. I was like, wait a minute, what is that? Okay, so this is a red anemone. And I'm just getting right up into the grill and just trying to play around with, with its skirt and just see what I can get out of it. Gorgonians. This one's front lit, but a lot of times I'll do it from the side. So this will be SoCal. So this will be someplace down in the Channel Islands. We don't have them up here yet, but we'll see what happens at the end of this fall. And one time I was at the break and there were these little teeny brown dorids. And so they were, maybe half an inch long to an inch. And first of all, it just cracked me up that they were crawling all over this warty cucumber, just making themselves at home, just using it as a cut through and climbing over it. But then when I found the puppy pile, I just thought it'd be a lot of fun.
Or is that a mating pile?
Yeah.
It is?
Yeah, so they just all got together and I was like, well, this could be fun. And so with these, yeah, sometimes because now it just becomes a blob. So is there any kind of place for your eye to rest? And so you can see some of the rhino horns here and here. So there's, I've got a number of them, and sometimes you want some place for your eye to rest. If it's just too busy, your brain just goes, ugh. So having some negative space, having some sort of, some kind of a main, it doesn't have to be a main subject, but it just has to be some place, and in jargon, it's just like for your eye to rest because it gets too busy, and then you can go back and take in the rest of the photo. Or
Do you ever use the photography thing where you do the rule of thirds in your pictures?
Yeah, I do rule of thirds most of the time. For some of these other ones, I'll play with the Da Vinci spiral a little bit. I haven't had too much luck really understanding that one. But yeah, the rule of thirds. Does everybody know rule of thirds? If I say that, does everybody know what I mean? So basically think of this as a tic-tac-toe board where you've got this thing. Because what ends up happening with, at least this is the way I was learning photography, when you look at a painting or something, your brain's going to come in, I guess because we read from left to right. Your eye's going to come in from here. It's actually going to make a zigzag pattern and then go out. And that's why a lot of times on the paintings, they're always going to see the artist's name down here because it's really kind of the last place your eye's going to look, and you can actually appreciate the painting without having the artist's name there. Whereas if you put it here, boom, that's the first thing that you see because that's the way that your brain goes in. So it's a tic-tac-toe board where the little squares are, where the squares meet, like that little X part, that's where you want some subjects to be, because that's going to land it's going to balance your composition a lot more than just throwing it out there. And they've done enough studies that they just called it rule of thirds. And I put a lot of value into it, and I play around with it a lot. This one has no rule. Kind of, actually, maybe it does. Maybe this would be right here. These rhinophores, they would be on the thirds. Because sometimes I'll do it from one side or the other side, usually from the right.
Dan, you mentioned the golden ratio, which is 1.62. And that's not much different from rule of thirds, really, is it?
Actually, it is, because it becomes a spiral. So this becomes, up here would be the main area, and then how it spirals out of it. Because in Lightroom, you can actually go to one of the settings, and it'll actually give you an outline of the Da Vinci spiral, and then you can frame your photograph around that. And I've played around with it a little bit.
That's neat.
But yeah, it's actually a tool in Lightroom that gives you the outline. You can just okay, just move the thing around it. So this was, I was diving at Hopkins, and there was a pile of mating Kellett's whelks, and I noticed something weird. I noticed that there was actually something different here. So I'm pretty far away right now. When you look at photographs, a lot of times I'll take photos of something. I'm not sure what it is because it's really small, because these things are still pretty small. So I couldn't really tell exactly what it is, but something just didn't look right or look different. And then, so it actually says 561. And then when I went to another one, I'm seeing 544. So I'm thinking some professor tortured his students by having them tag about 600 Kellett's whelks and then let them loose in Hopkins, which is Hopkins Marine Station is basically Stanford's Marine Station. And it's right in front of the aquarium. Because I can't see what they would do. And I actually took the photos and I called them up down south and I said, hey, I got these really cool photos with numbers on them. Does the professor want them? And we couldn't really find out whose experiment it was. But it just totally cracked me up. And that's it. I thought it was going to be a lot more questions than answers. So.
Well, does anybody have some questions? It looks like Hope, you have a question?
No, those are claps.
Okay.
Okay, well, thank you, Dan.
Thank you.
We can't all kind of clap here, but thank you.
No, it's fine.
Thank you. That was really interesting. I really.
Why don't you go ahead and unmute all, Alan?
Yeah, Alan. Yes, we can all clap.
Yeah, I guess you can if we unmute all. There we go. All participants are unmuted. We can all clap.
All right, thank you.
Meant virtual claps, but
virtual clap. If you have a chance, Dan was showing all macro tonight. He's got a wonderful landscape topside. Go to his Aqua, what is it, Dan? Aqua Terra photos on Instagram.
Yeah, Aqua Terra. So yeah, I think Aqua water and Terra land and then
land. Isn't it photos? Aqua Terra.
Yeah, Aqua Terra photos. Yeah.
Photos. Yeah. So
we have a question from Ernie. Arnie. Arnie, go ahead.
I kind of had two for Dan. One is what camera are you using? The second one
I
is.
have an Olympus OMD EM-I, but I'm actually purchased the new Sony, fairly new Sony A6400, and I'm actually waiting on the fantasy housing for it. That's in blue water. That's still on back order.
The second is when you use the wet macro, how much acuity do you lose?
Yeah.
Not that much for what I'm doing. I mean, probably if I was going into fine print, but it's a minor adjustment on the slider in Lightroom. So, because what he's talking about is that you're going to have a little bit of layer of water in between your lenses. And of course, you don't want anything in a perfect world. But it's so minuscule. It's really not anything that it's not a deal breaker. And it's actually a really nice lens. I mean, I used to stack lenses to equal what this the CMC actually does.
And I think it's off balance by the versatility that it gives you at the same time.
Yeah, you know, if I see a harbor
Ability
seal, I can
to-
take
to
that, and
shoot
if I
both
pop, if
types.
I don't, I can pop that on. So yeah.
So
And then,
Dan,
I'm sorry, go ahead, Neil.
Dan, I love wetmate lenses because if you carry them with you, then you see something in the middle of your dive and you can shoot that. You don't have to decide beforehand. But one of the frustrations when you've got macro subjects is getting the field of view. It's a very short field of view, and the object, the fish or whatever, always seems to arrange itself so you can't get the head and the tail in focus at the same time.
Yeah.
Do you? And
Well, there's a number of things. I mean, I have to change strobe settings. I have to change depth of field. I have to change. A lot of it is just being able to flip gears on my head of, wait a minute, I can't just put the lens on and shoot the same way that I was doing the wide angle, because it becomes,
God bless you.
you know, going from f5 to what I really want is about f18 for a macro. So just remembering to do that. And if I do that, then I need to crank up some of my strobe settings if they were low, or I have to crank up the ISO because now that I've got a smaller. But, so yeah, there's a few hoops that it's not just as easy as just putting one on and putting the other one on. And that's why you need to dive and dive often. It's kind of like you know, Photoshop and Lightroom. You got to play with it, or you just forget about all these settings.
It looks like we've got a question from Jay Goebel. Jay, you want to?
Yes, my question is, a lot of technology is moving towards 8K, cameras that are shooting video 8K, and the production companies are taking the slides, if you will, the still images right out of the 8K resolution with good results. I'd like to hear your comments on that technology.
Sure, give me another 5,000. I'll put together a video rig. You're looking at much more expensive lightings. I think the Light in Motion, I think I was playing, I was demoing the other ones. They're about $1,400 a pop for the two strobes on those things. And now you're looking at the camera. Now you're looking at the housing that the camera is going to go into. So video is a much more considerable investment. I mean, I can take photos out of this thing. So if I'm shooting a movie, I can literally press a button and get an 18K photo out of it. That looks pretty good. So I can actually do some of that stuff in camera.
Yeah, well,
but yeah, what they're doing with 8K, I mean, first of all, I don't know if there's TVs that can, you know, that can use that kind of technology, but it's just not something that, you know, me sharing on Instagram or on Facebook.
No, these guys are shooting
there.
reds,
Yeah,
you know, with prime lenses and, you know,
I'd rather buy a van. I need a van.
yeah, but a red one body's like 17K.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions for Dan here? I think we'll just kind of go to a free-for-all but I'd like to get any questions you have for Dan. Look for an article hopefully this week or this month or next month. None?
I'm gonna stop sharing the screen for right now, so everyone can see each other bigger.
Okay. Thank you. And Dan, thanks again. That was a great program. I really enjoyed
Thank you.
it. A lot of great images.
So yeah, I was sandbagging my South Pacific stuff. So.
So I think
just
just a reminder for a few people, you know, the board's been talking about how to keep people involved here, and one thing is ways hopefully by doing some of these virtual programs like we did tonight. So you know, write the board. You can just write board@aquatutus.org. Send us an email if you have any ideas, or if you like the program or have any other suggestions. We're looking for feedback on that. And right now, the best thing that I can tell you to keep aware of what's going on is to go into Meetup and sign up on our club. Oops, I see Arnie's got a question. Go ahead, Arnie.
I've been writing these articles for the tutor for a little over a year now. I'm kind of running out of ideas. So if you want to see more articles, send me ideas.
Well, I'm seeing that Keith Rootsaert's here. He would really like to present an idea. Go ahead, Keith, hit it.
Oh, I wasn't, sorry, I wasn't, my wife was talking about groceries tomorrow.
Okay.
But
He was talking about he needed some ideas for the tutor, and I'm like, hey. So
oh,
I hear
yeah,
you're doing
I
something
have
down
an
in Monterey,
idea.
Keith.
We are doing something exciting in Monterey. We have a petition that.
Okay, first of all, this is Keith Rootsaert. I know him from Reef Check, and thanks for coming, Keith.
Yeah, and Keith, let me mention, for those of you who don't know Keith, Keith is one of the key people that's trying to get this petition going to allow culling of urchins in Monterey. So he's one of the two people worked with Brian, and he also publishes the newsletter for the sanctuary, and he's a diver rep along with Brian Nelson. So he's an active guy, but he's got an interesting program going on right now, which is different. Keith, maybe you want to talk about that.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, thanks for the introduction there, Alan. That's great. Yeah, I've been doing this for a little while, trying to get permission for recreational divers to be able to cull urchins to restore the kelp that we're losing in Monterey. We watched it go down quite a bit, and as a Reef Check diver, I see it all the time. And kind of happened in 2014. It started going bad, and there's just more urchins at more sites. And so we're trying to get it open and to do a restoration project. And the only way to do it really is by recreational divers. The scientific collecting permit is too small, and so. We petitioned the Fish and Wildlife. We had a lot of support from people that are in this club and a lot of Reef Check divers, and we had overwhelming support before the Fish and Game Commission. And the Fish and Game Commission voted to move that along and have the Fish and Wildlife Department review the petition. And basically the petition is for a limited area in Monterey to cull urchins. I say purple and red urchins is what we're proposing. And in a limited area at Tankers Reef and also in the Edward F. Ricketts Marine Conservation Area, basically Cannery Row, from the breakwater all the way through to the aquarium. And there was an objection to that, that they would want to do not do restoration in there. So we proposed an alternative site of Lover's Cove. So that's what we asked for. And the good news is that the Fish and Wildlife has responded to me saying that they want to give us the Tankers Reef project. They still want to argue about the Marine Conservation Area and the Marine Reserve, but the Tankers Reef project is going to be a go. It's going to be a long process to get it approved, but it really only got as far as it did because a lot of divers that responded to this and spoke up and spoke at the meetings and came along, and we need those same divers to keep us moving this along politically through this process. And also when it becomes a project, it'll be in the spring of next year. We'll need these same divers to come out and dive on the site and smash the urchins with a hammer. So that's the good news. So it's a long time coming, and I'm really excited to tell you guys about it and to ask for your continued participation in this.
Is there a next meeting that we need to write petitions for? Or is it pretty much not just paperwork?
Right now, well, the next meeting is in August. I'm not sure the exact date, and we'll send out more, to the diving community, some more information on what we actually get determined from Fish and Wildlife is really going to offer. There's the devil's in the details, and so I want to make sure that I'm able to give everybody a complete picture of what we're looking at. So.
But do we need to do any more petition writing?
Yeah, I think we'll have to keep it moving along at the next meeting. It's been really nice to have it all on Zoom, actually, because people can tune into the commission meetings and participate without having to drive all the way to Sacramento. So we had 39 people come to the last, speak at the last meeting, and it was actually really helpful. It's kind of a guerrilla warfare thing to have so many speakers, but it was effective and it moved the ball forward. So. I think that's the only way.
We're still going to have to do that for next month's meeting, though. Is that right?
Yeah, for next month's meeting of the Fish and Game Commission, yes, we'll. That will be the department will have a recommendation to the commission, and we'll have to look at what they're recommending. And you know, people can talk about whether that's a good thing or whether there's more to argue about or what have you. But we want to definitely have people write letters in before that meeting, and to, if they can, to attend the meeting and to speak at the meeting. This has been kind of an easy issue. I don't really have to sell it hard. You know, you speak whatever you think is the truth, and it'll all work out. You know, divers seem to be unanimous on this topic, and there's no organized opposition, and I don't think there's going to be. So.
Yeah, for the rest of the club, we talked about that in the tutor last or time before perhaps, and so there are some reports, and it's really easy when before these meetings, the email is just a 2 sentences. We send you the link. All you have to do is to put in 2 sentences, say that I support these petitions, and that really is helpful if they get enough of them. So we'll be getting that same information into the tutor this time, and if we we can get it out by email or something, we'll try to do that as well. Yeah, but thanks, Keith, for all the time that you put into this.
Oh yeah, thanks for all your support. It's been great.
So Keith, like when they shut down, created the reserves, I understand why the fishermen and so on objected. I don't agree with them, but I understand. In this case, who on earth is objecting, if anybody, to culling urchins?
Well, that is the fight to be had, I think, is about the marine conservation areas and the marine reserves, and what is the intent of those laws, and is it okay for them to be an urchin barren, or should they be restored? And the policy of the Fish and Wildlife is that these areas are off limits to human uses. I mean, not human, like human take, or disturbance is kind of the idea behind it. And there's 124 of them in the state, and they believe that anything that has to be done for restoration activities can usually be done outside of an MPA, and they won't permit any restoration within a marine protected area. That's what my MPA is, a marine protected area. Okay. And so that becomes the challenge for them. Well, yeah, there's a law that they have to follow, and they have to follow their law. And so that is kind of the upside down thing about it, is that it does not allow restoration. And that's what we're actually talking about at the Marine Resources Committee. We're trying to bring it up as a new topic that's not on their agenda, that, there's possibilities of, we'll have to go into these marine protected areas and do restoration for urchins or for invasive species. There's been sargassum that has come into some of these areas in Southern California, and they can't do anything to clear it, even though it's an invasive. So
exactly. And are you going to protect zebra mussels, and are you going to protect lionfish? It doesn't make any sense. The ideology is getting in the way of reality.
I'm right there with you.
Yeah, so I think there really is no organized opposition to this, Neil. It's people stumbling over these laws and looking at it legalistically, and I think that's the problem that we've been facing.
Yeah, and to change these rules, sometimes they get into these long processes. Like the law to change the Marine Life Protection Act it's a 2-year process. It would be solved in 2022, and that's kind of it's a heavy lift, and a lot of things could go wrong trying to change that law in that amount of time. There's actually been some idea of doing legislative action to change the law through the California legislature.
I would say avoid trying to change the law as such, but get an emergency waiver enacted. We do that for things like COVID and so on. That would be the way to approach it.
Yeah, they actually said they would not consider it an emergency because there's not a major impact to a fishery like on the North Coast. So.
Yeah, you were able to get this through on the North Coast. They were more cooperative, I think, and it's because it had some impact on the fishery industry. Is that right, Keith? But
that's correct. I believe the Monterey impact on tourism is going to be greater than that. That was done on the North Coast, but that's kind of part of the argument, and that's something to be discussed.
That's what I deal with. Yep.
think the North Coast is also a guinea pig site. You know, they picked Casper Cove to see, or Caspar Cove, just to see what'll happen before they open it up to creating something here. Because you don't want to
Yeah,
create an imbalance on top of an already imbalance. I think that's one of the
Well, one thing I would say about like even the Tankers Reef project too, and the Casper Cove project is that these are more of a social experiment to a large degree to see if recreational divers can do this and do this, you know, in a way that gives data and a way that's effective, and they don't destroy the environment, or they want to determine what the effect of divers are on this environment. There's lots of ways for divers to get ruled out of this equation. It has to be done right. We kind of only have one shot at doing this right, and we need to get a lot of divers to come into this and to be safe about it. There's lots of points of failure, but that's the way to really move it forward, is to prove to them that divers can do it here, and we'll restore kelp. I mean, I'm not worried about that. You take out the urchins, the kelp will come back, but it has to be that the divers are the solution, and we're the eyes looking for the invasives, and that we can do it in more areas and scale some kelp restoration to really have a habitat.
And I should also add, he's also got the experiment of, because you can't kill them all. We'd love to kill them all, but that would just create a new imbalance. So what is the threshold? Because they're not invasive. They're just population monkey. And
yeah, they are a native
again, I've
species.
seen a number of really well-meaning environmental actions taken by humans that have completely screwed things up. Mongooses let loose in Hawaii, and that would be one of the eucalyptus that are here in our backyard would be another one.
Yeah,
so
there's a long story history of failures, right?
Threshold, yeah.
Well, and for us trying to do what nature can do well, it's just that we're not, if we could get the sunflower stars back, the major predators for the urchins, the balance would restore itself, but that's going to take a while.
Right.
And can they be introduced without knowing that they're not diseased? That would be something else to look at.
Yeah, there is a lack of urchin predators for sure, but there needs to be a correction here so that the otters can eat the macroinvertebrates inside of a healthy kelp forest. They won't eat the urchins out in the barrens. So you kind of have to move it from one stable state to another by having this perturbance of reducing, suppressing the urchin densities.
Do they think it ever will be stable without the sunflower stars there? They were always their major predators, weren't they?
Well, there's so many changes in it. Maybe with warming waters. I don't know that we'll be able to have sunflower stars here again. But it's going to be a new regime for sure. It's going to have to come into play here.
That's true.
There's been it's been a real regime shift.
And that's part of what the experiment down in Lovers is to figure out what the threshold is to bring the kelp back.
Right. Yeah. Bill's been active in that too, and he comes out on Wednesdays and helps. We go around and smash urchins. So we have 20 of these target reefs. I call them targets, but basically they're rocks that are surrounded by sand. We put an identification tag on them so we know which ones they are. 4 of them are controls, and 16 of them we vary the density of urchins with a hammer. We go and smash them, and we bring it down to very low densities because we believe that it's probably like 1 urchin per square meter is about the limit that you can have and have kelp come back. And so we designed it around that. With some of them have low densities, some of them are very high densities, to see, well, is there a clear pattern here? If the kelp comes to the low density ones and not to the high density ones, then there's your statistical number that you're trying to get to, right? So we did it last year, and we kind of got a late start, and we removed all the purples down to their densities, and we're able to control it really well. The urchins didn't really migrate too much over the sand. That's the limiting factor for them. They do cross it, but we find that over time there'd be less and less urchins coming to our site. And actually over the winter, there was barely any movement coming across. It was like, the migration rates were very low. But so we had kelp persist on one of our targets. and that kelp lasted from from year to year. I mean, we had kelp on a few of our targets, but then the urchins would eat it. But this one actually survived, and that was our lowest density target. And if you look at the average density on that target, it was 0.58 urchins per square meter. So that's a very low number. But we need to prove it out more and get more persistent recruitment from year to year. And we're working on it again this year, and we're going around and reducing the numbers. But this year we're also removing the red urchins, because purple urchins are kind of the boogeyman, but the red urchins are boogeyman too. You know, they increase their numbers 100-fold. And when you smash all of the purple urchins, it attracts the red urchins. They come over to there and eat all the carcasses of the purples, and then they stay. They never leave. So the density of red urchins is quadrupled over the duration of last year.
So Keith, is that project at Lovers on those isolated rocks where you're doing varying the density, is that being done by Reef Check under their auspices, or
it is done under Reef Check? Yes. It's under a scientific collecting permit. Yeah, but you're not allowed to go smash urchins normally, but under the scientific collecting permit, and I'm one of the authorized individuals. So it's really controlled, you know, and we report back all of our information to Fish and Wildlife, and there's real data that comes out of it. But the bottom line is it works, right? If you get them down real low, the kelp will come back, and a lot of it depends. We think on like spore availability. Like, is there a plant nearby that can have reproductive spores that go to the site? Because it doesn't, a giant kelp doesn't cast its spores very far. It just goes, you know, back and forth a little bit, like maybe like, you know, 100 meters or something. Where the bull kelp goes for like, it's in the currents, its reproductive fronds are at the top, and it just goes in the currents and goes to the other parts of the coast. So it's kind of what you'd expect to see, is that the bull kelp comes first because it's so available. And then the giant kelp will come after that, maybe even attaching to the holdfast that's established by the bull kelp. And then they kind of grow up together, and then the bull kelp reaches the surface, and eventually the giant kelp reaches the surface, forms a big canopy, and shades out all the bull kelp. That's how you transition from a bull kelp forest to a giant kelp forest. And that's what happened to Monterey in the 70s, and it's been a giant kelp forest ever since, until like when the urchins are eating it right now.
So Keith, you're implying not only do you get persistence of kelp when you keep the urchin population down, but you get recruitment of new kelp. You've seen that already.
That's right. That's right. And then if you have an urchin barren, it gets more urchins on it, because the urchins are cued to that. The last thing that the urchins eat is the articulated coralline algae. That's that pink bubblegum stuff you see on everything. That's what makes them cue and say, oh, okay, I'm gonna be an urchin now. They pull themselves inside out, become an urchin. So once you have an urchin barren, you'll just get more urchins. But if you have a little bit of soft substrate with kelp on it, they won't recruit to it. And the corollary of that is that fish recruit to the kelp, right? That's how they know to settle out and become fish. So the more urchin barrens you get less kelp, you get less fish. And it kind of lags behind, but we're trying to track that down with Reef Check data. If it's really, what's the impact on these fish populations from having all these urchin barrens up and down the California coast? I mean, Dan Schwartz was telling me how, you know, they don't go fishing up at Russian Gulf much because fishing is terrible there. It just, you know, once you take the fish, it doesn't like, it needs a new fish to take its place. It's not sustainable, I think.
Yeah. I was diving with Linda on the breakwater about 2 or 3 weeks ago, I guess now. And I was fairly horrified because although there's still kelp there, I hadn't seen a lot of urchins on the breakwater itself before. And now there were some kind of holes between rocks that were just full of purple urchins.
Exactly, yeah. We did the Reef Check instructor retreat this year at the breakwater, and we did some surveys there. And 3 of our very experienced instructors found 40 urchins per square meter on the breakwater wall.
Yeah.
So these are very high numbers there. And very small urchins too. Talk about urchins a little bit, is that when they're born, everything's born small, right? And they get bigger. But in the first year, they'll get to 2 centimeters, and then the second year is about 3 centimeters. So when you see them on the wall and they're like 2 and 3 centimeters, these are pretty much new urchins, right? These are not the big urchins that have been around a while. So when you get more bursts like that, you're only going to get more numbers, and it's, you know, your density is going to increase, and it just means more urchins and less kelp at all these sites.
I have a question. Since we're not allowed to do urchin culling in the protected areas, marine protected areas, it seems like we're not allowed to do it anywhere, like anywhere in Monterey, like even at the breakwater. Is that correct?
That's correct. When the stakeholders set up the MPAs, the divers representatives were really good, and they gave us a lot of protected areas for diving. And so if you go from the breakwater all the way around the peninsula, you know, all the way to through Point Lobos, it's all marine protected areas where you can get access to the water. Where the access is where the MPAs were established for that reason. And so now because of those rules, they're protected. Now it's hard to actually do restoration for a native species because the policy wasn't set up that way.
So is the problem, you can do this culling in the lovers area, the one you just described, but you can't do it other areas? Is it just because you have a limited number of more trained people under Reef Check, and doing it at Ricketts or a tanker, they're gonna just get mobs of people in there? Is that the problem?
Well, there is, well, at the Lovers 3 site, it is all Reef Check trained divers. These are divers that are certified by Reef Check. And so, you know, that piece of it is, I think, well, I'm not really sure.
I think what he's asking is, Alan, when he set this up, he actually had to set up a whole experiment and present it to the authorities, and they had to review it.
It is a designed experiment set up by Jan Brewald and Mark Carr from UC Santa Cruz, and they set the experiment. So it's a scientific collecting permit, but the scientific collecting permit has a limitation of only not having any effect on the urchin population within that marine protected area. It has to be negligible, right? You're not allowed to smash so many. Actually, do too many, and they start, because there's a whole decision tree scientific paper that describes how you administer these projects and not allow large efforts. You can't do something under the guise of a scientific collection permit that is like a big restoration effort of 20 acres. It just
that was kind of my question. How are they
Yeah.
different? So that's a good explanation. Thanks.
Yeah.
Hey, Keith, I have another question about the red urchins.
Yes.
My impression was that they were edible in commercial, projects.
Yeah.
So is that so?
Yeah, the red urchins are the desirable product. They're
really good.
Commonly in sushi. I guess uni, right? That's in sushi, and they use the red urchins. And there's a red urchin fishery in California. The red urchin fishery in Northern California is defunct now. There's no more productivity there. In Southern California, it's complete fishery collapse. They went from 11 million tons to like 1.2 million tons of red urchins. So it's not really a very valuable, and all of this, most of the product goes to Japan, is where its primary market is. So the red urchins that are in the barrens, of course, don't have any gonad in them. They're not edible. So the idea is to pump them up, and using urchinomics is one of the proposals, but not using red urchins, but using purple urchins, and rehabilitate the urchins by feeding them agricultural products in a aquaculture environment. And then they're really resilient creatures. They're amazing. They'll rebound in 6 to 8 weeks and be marketable. And so the idea is to take these purple urchins and size select them and put the big ones into this urchinomics aquaculture and be able to sell it. But the red urchins are the more desirable product, not the purple urchins. So you have to try to get people in Japan to start eating purple urchins, which from what I hear is actually a very possibility, because the purple urchins are a little sweeter and they fit on the little rice cake better than the large red urchins. So, but you have to develop an industry that's scalable and a market, scale a market at the same time. So that's a long way out to do it. And just working on just getting the big ones is not that as helpful as getting all of them. You know, you can't leave the little guys behind. So you'd have to have the urchinomics do a first pass and then have that pay for a second pass to smash all the rest.
And to complicate things, the roe on some of these is a really dark orange, and some of them are almost like this light yellow, and I think that's male and female. And we were playing around like, whoa, which one's the best? You know, do we get the the deep orange colored one, almost looking like a pumpkin colored one, or do we eat this really light yellowish kind? And we put it on sushi and played around with it. And so when he was talking about what's the market, that's another variable to throw into there. People want to get used to the dark orange versus the light yellow. Because yeah, I mean they have different tastes. Like they can taste different rice from different parts of Japan, which to me it's just like, well, it's it's jasmine rice. I don't know. It's a whole different.
Also, the bottom line on the red urchins that are out there in the barrens, they have the same lack of gonad reproduction that the purple urchins do. So even if somebody tried to go down and collect those and send them to Japan without any further cultivation of their gonads, they wouldn't be able to sell them. So you can't just go down there and pull them up and sell them immediately. So even worse, if you want to try to make that happen, it wouldn't work that way.
Yeah, a lot of the red urchin fishermen, they're kind of a tough bunch. They want to actually remove the red urchins and put them into another place, right? Like put them into another kelp forest, and then they would use the kelp as a resource to rehabilitate the red urchins. Then they would go and harvest them. But I don't really like that idea very much. I don't know where to put them.
Not up on the North Coast. There's nothing there at Fort Bragg.
Yeah.
I understood that actually up north, they were actually trying to raise and feed these urchins to try to get a market to sell them. So they were pumping them up offshore or on land in basins, and that they were then trying to sell those to try to encourage divers, make it financially reasonable for divers to go and collect more. They were trying to.
So that's why I understand there's an operation at Bodega Bay.
Yeah.
And there's also one at Moss Landing Marine Labs as well, with Michael Graham, and the phycology department is running an aquaculture experiment right there.
Okay. So, Bill, are you developing recipes for urchins now?
Oh yeah, no, tons of them. You should see my urchin souffle. Yeah, I mean, the other problem with this is that it's kind of sidetracked talking about the cooking of it, because for the amount of urchins we have out there, you can supply every restaurant with 10 urchins for every person who goes in all around the world, and you barely touch how many urchins there are out there right now. I mean, the supply that you would ever have would far outweigh the demand that you could do through the actual edible part of it. There is potential for using it as fertilizer at one point. I don't know how far that's gone.
That was kind of what they were doing on the North Coast, is they were using for fertilizer, but it takes a lot of anything for fertilizer. And fertilizer is kind of not, we have rules against wanton waste of killing things just to kill them, like a trophy or something. And there's that wanton waste rule, and it's kind of a gray area, but it's kind of looking the other way on it. Nothing should be fertilizer, right? Nothing should live to be fertilizer. But in that, and also the fertilizer industry wants hundreds of tons, like thousands of tons, right? They don't want just a little bit. But the other problem is, like, if you smash them in the water, is just so much better. The fish eat them up. The starfish eat them, and it came from the ocean. It goes back to the ocean. Net perfect, right? Like, why would you put it on land? Anyways.
Yeah, like yesterday when we were at Lovers, the visibility was absolutely amazing, and for the first time, I could see the fish sort of lining up from a distance, coming up to eat the urchins that we were culling, which I thought was really cool. I really liked it.
Yeah. No, I haven't seen that one. Like we're into the Channel Islands when you can mash them up. You open up one of those things and it's like a shark frenzy. I mean, the Garibaldi and the bass, kelp bass were just going after everything, and it was just wonderful. And then here, when I was busting them up, the fish just look at you like, huh? So it's actually cool that they're finally getting hip to like, hey, there's a diver and there's some urchin and we're gonna get some food.
Yeah, the little sand dabs come over and the little black-eyed gobies are all like, all of a sudden they all start showing up, you know?
Yeah, because
Pretty
I have
cool.
photos of Fish Frenzy, but there's so much muck in the water, it doesn't look like anything, but it's an awful lot of fun to watch. And then Channel Islands said, no, you can't do that anymore. But
Yeah, we actually, after we culled the rock, I put a time-lapse camera there and watched it for 3 hours to see what happened, what fish came around and stuff. Pretty cool. It's fun.
We did it down in Mexico across the border from San Diego, and the Garibaldis were just flocking around us. It was crazy.
no, it's a shark frenzy. It was fun.
Yeah, swimming in an eating frenzy of Garibaldis, orange cloud.
So what do you think, Alan? You gonna have Keith on next month?
Sorry?
You gonna have Keith on next month?
I think we kind of talked about
Or
it
did he
already, but
already
if you
share
want to go into more
everything?
detail, I'm welcome to share, you know.
I think it's everybody that was on the call right now anyway. Like, oh, okay.
Yeah, I kind of stumbled into this. It's kind of weird. Like sometimes I'll go and talk about the sanctuary or talk about something else. And it always comes down to urchins. You know, everyone starts talking about urchins for a long time, and then it finally ends up at the killer robot idea. You know,
we need something like that. 100 million urchins versus 2,000 divers. Yeah, we need something.
It sounds like
if you're interested, we could do it.
A speaker on Photoshop and Lightroom and how to edit photos once you get it done. Seems like a lot of people have questions on that.
Well, if you have some ideas for programs that we can kind of do in a virtual mode, one of the programs we had scheduled for this year was to have Jim Steele and Ed Shannon do a program that they did at InCups a year and a half ago or something. It was a really interesting program about the evolution of dive equipment. And between the two of them, they have a lot of this old equipment, and it makes for a very interesting program.
Jim's got some great stuff in his shop.
But it's hard to do that in a virtual sort of arrangement like this. But if you have ideas for,
actually, we could just set up a webcam in Jim's shop and just walk around and look at that stuff.
Yeah, but I don't know how to do a webcam and kind of walk around and stuff. It sounds easy, but it's to do it. If any of you want to jump in and help make that happen, that would be great. I can certainly support that.
Okay, well, I got a GoPro in order, but yeah, I mean, just walk around with with the laptop or with another.
Yeah, I'm trying to twist Arnie's arm here to do a program and perhaps Bruce Watkins, who also is in Hawaii. So
Jim's not going to have Wi-Fi there, but that's another story.
Yeah.
We'll have to create a hotspot.
Yeah.
Arnie's still able to dive, Alan. So maybe we could. Arnie is still able to dive in Hawaii, and so for those of us who are stuck not doing much diving, maybe Arnie could take us on a virtual dive. Take his camera, shoot some video, and show us some diving in case we've forgotten what it's like.
I think you're seeing that behind him right now. He's being attacked by that big shark in Hawaii there.
Well, my dive plans for the last 2 weeks were delayed.
What happened? I saw that, Arnie.
Keep growing skin cancer, so they keep cutting it out.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
So,
I have that problem too.
I was good to dive this weekend, and then this damn hurricane shows up. So I don't think we're going diving this weekend. But yeah, Alan's been talking to me about that.
Yeah. So, and if you would like to, I'm really always looking for, input on the tutor. So if you have pictures, short articles, there's a couple of good ones that I'm put in this month that Dan has shared, and Arnie has a good one coming in. So there's a couple good articles in this month's tutor that should come out next week. So, but I'm always looking for input on that. Okay, so
What about members night? Are we still going to do one of those this year?
we haven't talked. We could talk about that at the board meeting. We could. That's something that we could potentially do as in a virtual mode here. But I haven't been plowing much ground on on programs because it's just it's been because of the uncertainty really. But I think we should just assume that we're not going to be able to have programs for the next 6 months or until we get a vaccine or something. So yeah, we need to start looking seriously. And what do you guys think? Do you think you could do we could do a members night?
Yes. Why? You can do virtual programs like this, and you can just have people screen share. Sure.
Yeah, sure. If people would like to do that. So maybe we can try to set one of those up.
I'd be glad to help with that too.
Yeah, I'm sure. Thank you, Linda. Okay, so I think we'll just kind of close out this meeting, but thank you all for coming. And
Yeah, thanks everybody for showing up.
yeah, Dan, thank you for the program. Linda, for all your help. And Keith, thank you for bringing all these points up here. That was very interesting. Appreciate that.
Oh, you're sure welcome. Anytime.
Thank you, Alan.
Good. Thank you all. And
Thanks everybody. Have a good night. Stay safe.
Thanks again, Dan.
Bye.
okay.
Nice to see
Thank
everybody.
you.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Hey, Alan, don't forget to stop recording.
Okay, I'll do that. Thank you. Recording more.